More than 30 years ago, I discovered 16 genetic personality types. I call them the 16 geniuses. I call them geniuses because they're so brilliant and so intuitively amazing inside of each person, this genetic type, that they're geniuses. And then once I discovered that, and I discovered that, I was rehabilitating my body from my automobile accident, and in the process of discovering how muscles naturally stretch by contracting and elongating, without intentionally looking for that information, besides my body changing and upgrading and repairing, I started accessing and developing different parts of my personality. That was really not really what I was intending, and nothing I ever thought about ever doing. But here it was, it happened. And I couldn't deny the fact that when I stretched very specific muscle groups, I got very specific developments of my personality. And then I started interviewing a lot of people that I found out were that type that I could identify. And they helped me identify even more the traits associated with that aspect of my personality. I was, of course, born a particular type, and that's kind of a 24/7 affair. And I know kind of the most about that. But everybody would like to have other qualities besides just the ones they're born with. But then what I noticed after I identified the types was that certain types tended to get along with each other better than others. Not only that, they had particular types of relationship happening. I could see that when you put two people together that were particular types, that for whatever reason, they had a creative relationship. And then I could see two other people that were different types, but when they got together, they had a creative relationship also. I could not figure it out. I did not know how these were happening. All I knew is that when any two people got together, for some reason, when they got together, they created a type of relationship. And some people created a creative relationship. Some it was business, some it was work, some it was leadership, some it was more perfection. I knew I couldn't figure it out. But I don't think you know this about me, but I'm like a math guy. I taught math at a couple colleges. I love numbers. I loved algebra. I mean, where most people would have a book next to their bed where they would read, I have an algebra book and I like to do algebra problems. And I do the same dumb problem over and over again because most people think they're solving the algebra problem, but for me, I was solving how I solve the algebra problem. That's what I like to do. So anyhow, I figured out I could use algebra to identify the relationships. So I very simply called a type a variable and called another type another variable. And when you add them together, it created a type of another variable. It's algebra, simple. And then based on algebraic rules, you can switch these equations. You can change the two sides as long as you keep everything equal. I used the algebra and identified 16 types of relationships. And the unusual thing about it is that the high trait of one of the types is the nature of that type of relationship. So there's a type associated with being creative. And when two people get together, they create that high trait of that creative type. But they're couples that create this relationship. That means there's 8 couples that have a type of creative relationship. And there are 8 couples that balance each other. And there are 8 couples that have an intimate relationship. And when they do, a very unusual, broad definition of what it means to be creative or balancing shows up. For example, if you put a personality type associated with the thymus, a healing personality, and you put them together with a type that's associated with business, and when you put those two together, for reasons they're not well understood, they have a creative relationship. That means they both encourage each other to be creative. But when you ask the healing person, as opposed to the bladder person, how they're learning in that relationship to be creative, you find that here you have the healing type here you have the business person here, the honest person here, And the healing person says they have to get honest to be creative. And the honest person says they have to do healing to be creative. So they're learning each other's traits as an important ingredient in order to learn how to be creative. You put another two types together, like a heart type, somebody that's unconditionally loving, and you put a type together that's about balance. And when you put those two types together, the balancing person says they have to be unconditionally loving to create. And the unconditionally creative person says, oh, they have to be more balanced or communicative to create. Interesting concept. Let's try one more. If you put a personality type that's associated with knowing perfection and a personality type together that's associated with trust, the trusting person says they have to be more perfect to create, and the perfect person says, I need to trust myself more in order to create. So many years ago, from stretching 8 muscle groups in my legs, 8 muscle groups in my upper body, each one of those muscle groups entered me into identifying a genetic personality type who has high traits and low traits. And then I discovered that these types, when you put them together, create 16 types of relationships. That means that when you meet any particular person, besides learning from them about their type and what their traits are good at doing, you also create the nature of that chemistry of those two people, create a type of relationship that if you honor, that's the basis, one of the bases of those relationships. There's actually 4 bases. There's what type is each person, what type of relationship are they creating, what's the chemistry creating, what's the subjective attraction between the two people, and what's the practical attraction between the two people. So there's really 4 parts. But I'm talking about the chemistry between the two types in particular and how you can benefit and own that up and reinforce that. And when you do, you can find out that if you had trouble being creative because it's hard for you to connect to that part of yourself, there is a type of person that can get you to do that. And if you have trouble with business, there's a type of person that can get your relationship, not just you, but your relationship can sponsor you to have a good feel for how to do that business. So that's 16 types of relationships, natural phenomena, incredible in when they get put together, or also equally terrible if they go in the wrong direction. They can go high or low. Let's go high with them and find out how to have these great relationships no matter who you're with, whether it's your family, the people you work with, the people you're close to, the person you meet just for a moment on the street or in a store. Find out about that relationship and make that incredible for both people. Okay.